If a lot of people are talking about how do you automate software development, and I think there's two competing visions of this. One is take the parts that devs hate the most about their job that are easy to automate and go and build a bunch of automations for that. What are the 100 repetitive tasks that you and your teammates do? Go and automate those. Build a factory for software development so that you, as someone who's so creative, has so much leverage. You're not blocked on all the dumb shit like starting a new test from scratch or updating the changelog. Oops, I forgot to do that step, or all these other things. That's amazing. And that is actually that exists today. Our customers are building that on Sourcegraph. There's another view of agent, which is like a humanoid robot, one of those robots that looks like a human and has arms and stuff. And that's always been in science fiction, but that is not ambitious. Well, one, it doesn't work, but two, it's not ambitious because it's basically taking everything that software development is today and saying, but what if AI could do it exactly and nothing else changes around it? That is not ambitious. I mean, the world has changed so much from the 1800s and when we built factories to automate, the creation of textiles, and that created global trade and this whole system of the world that is better in so many ways that we could not have imagined back then. And I don't think that, it was even viable back then to say, oh, let's build a robot to go and, mine the yarn and do everything. No, you automate what you can automate. And that ultimately is far more efficient. And even today, if you look at textile factories, humans are in the loop. But to be clear, when we're talking about automating software development, we're not talking about humans doing, the menial tasks. We're talking about doing that with AI, because it turns out AI is really good at that. That's our vision of automation. And that works best when you work on a team, because only on a team are you willing to put in that upfront investment to say, here's a really great prompt and some other stuff around that, like in our prompt library, to generate a great unit test. Because that upfront investment in automation is amortized over all the times it's used by all of your team members. So that is our vision, and we are so excited. And frankly, our customers are pulling it out of us and building these agents faster on our platform than we could have imagined.
Yeah, I think it's a question that everyone's sort of asking right now, because agents are the kind of current thing and buzzword in AI. And to echo Quinn, I think that, taking a step back, there's kind of like two ends of the spectrum here. On the one end, you have the people who are like the purity test enforcers who are like, oh, is it truly agentic? What is this thing? What is the exact definition of an agent? On the other end, you have people just using the term colloquially, like a lot of our users and customers say that they're building agents against our API to automate various sources of toil like code review or CI/CD, or just to help them do tasks in the editor. And I think historically, the ones who win this debate are the colloquialists, because those are the ones actually reflecting how the term is being used in practice by the masses. And so I think we're just going to embrace the term as it's being used by our users, which is to describe just like any sort of piece of automation that incorporates AI into its kind of like thought process to get rid of some source of human toil in the software development lifecycle.
Cool. Yeah, that is an interesting one. Like an academic definition of the word agent versus how it's used in the real world. And one thing that I remember Quinn or someone else mentioning is, you mentioned that sometimes the software engineers, maybe engineers, managers, are asked to look into agents by their bosses, right?
Yeah, everyone wants to know, how do you use AI to automate software development? And it's got so much potential. I think what every developer wants is not to be sent on a goose chase by their boss, not to have their boss, their CEO think, hey, I heard this other company at the golf course, at the steakhouse saying that they were able to do whatever. There's so much bullshit out there. So you want to take what is an actual task that can be automated and go and automate that. And that was a lot of the inspiration for our prompt library, which was, an early form, actually, even before that, custom commands, which we got so much amazing feedback from the community about. And you all use that in way more ways than we could have even imagined. That is tangible automation that you can do now. rather than, the thing that your CEO is hearing at the steakhouse in the country club.
Yeah, we want to be kind of your partners in figuring out the mapping between what the current hype buzzword is and things that you can actually do that are useful to you. Because the way the world works right now is that there's this kind of like hype engine that's pumping up various terms. First it was like AI in general, then it was like co-pilots for a while, and now I think it's like agents are the topic du jour. And so that hype engine bleeds through. A lot of people at the executive level soak that all in and want to do something about it. Like their intentions are good. There's obviously potential here, but then they go to the folks inside their organization and say, like, we want to do something with agents, and it's up to a lot of the folks in the room with us right now to go and translate that to actual impact, actual tasks that can be automated that are going to be better for the business. So we're happy to work with you on mapping whatever the executives in the room want to do, mapping that to a buzzword, but also making sure that it's actually helping improve your day-to-day life as a developer or the lives of the people that you work with inside your organization.
Cool. I think this hype versus reality has been a huge thing that I've noticed, at Sourcegraph, right? Because there's so much hype out there, and it's sometimes easy to get caught up in that, but it's also, I know, important to focus on the reality.
Totally.
Cool. So the way this session is going to go is we have sort of a list of questions that we've received prior to this stream. So we're going to answer some of that, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of your questions as well. I won't be able to, see comments directly, just so I can focus on what's happening on the stream. But just sit down here, we'll be able to see your comments and questions. Looks like we have our first question here.
Cool. Yeah, so this question, will you add DeepSeek R1 when DeepSeek releases the API or open sources the model? I can't make any like exact commitments here because we typically don't do this ahead of a model release. We want to play around with the model and see how it works for our users first. But in general, our policy is when a new model comes online and it scores well on our evals and we see it doing well on the use cases that we care about, we like to incorporate that model and make it available to as many Sourcegraph and Cody users as possible.
What are our thoughts on Super Maven joining Cursor? There's a lot of really smart people building really cool stuff. I got lunch with Jacob Jackson a couple weeks ago, just to say congrats. I think there's a lot of space in software development, and there's the kind of individual. There's building a tool that works great for like 5 or 10% of devs in a company who love AI and who are fine with a tool that doesn't always work. One analogy is I just got a Tesla, and self-driving is pretty damn good. But honestly, even if it sucked, it is still so magical that I would still turn it on all the time. People can make an amazing product for that set. What we're focused on is quality and consistency in an enterprise setting. So making it so that 100% of software developers in a big enterprise can get a ton of value consistently. And if 2 people are doing the same thing, they have the same problem, then they can solve it in the same way. And this gets to automation. So, on one end of the spectrum, you have, making, where am I? There I am. On one end of the spectrum, you have making great stuff for individuals. And on the other end, you have, making it work really well in an enterprise. The reason why we think the enterprise focus is really interesting, besides the fact that it's actually how you build a sustainable business long-term, is it's only in the enterprise that you have that kind of economy of scale to build further automation. You can't build a factory for a cottage industry, only when there's a company that's doing some certain thing like 1,000 times a day. I think I love seeing all the new products come out, but we're just totally focused on making this work, quality and consistency for every dev in an enterprise.
Actually, before we jump into this question, what you said is kind of interesting to me. 100% of enterprise developers. The way SaaS in general works is, we introduce a SaaS product, Cody or Sourcegraph, both code search, and then some developers use it, some don't. But I guess in some cases, it's possible to get 100% of the developers to use it.
Yeah, We have customers that, Palo Alto Networks, for example, more than 85% of devs use it. We've got so many other big customers. I mean, we serve 4 of the top 6 US banks, 6 of the top 10 software companies by market cap. We got every dev at Stripe using us, and all these other amazing companies. It's just a different thing, because what enterprises want is quality and consistency for all the devs, and something that 5 or 10% of their devs love. That's cool, but what they're going to want to say is, how can we get this rolled out to everyone? And it turns out it's actually a slightly different product that you got to build to appeal to the first 5 or 10% versus to make it work for 100%. Prompt library is a great example, and all the automation focus is a great example.
I noticed you mentioned prompt library a lot, and I can see that you're really excited about it. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more. But I guess we can go into our next question first.
When will Deep Cody be available to all users? Byung.
Yeah, so happy to announce that Deep Cody is available for all pro users as of, I guess technically yesterday, but today it's available. So go on, try it out. It's available as a drop down in the selector box in the Cody input. I think YK is going to show off a quick demo now. And yeah, if you're using Deep Cody, if you're using Cody Pro, go try it out. Cody free users, unfortunately, we can't quite make it available to free users yet, just because the inference costs are a bit higher for this modality. But LMs are constantly getting cheaper, so maybe we can roll it out for free users as well sometime in the future. No, VS Code Insider is not required for Deep Cody. You just got to update to the latest Cody release.
I think that's my prepared, that's my cue for doing my prepared demo. But first of all, for people who are not familiar with it, what's Deep Cody?
Yeah, so Deep Cody is basically like a way for Cody to gather additional context by using tools and by using reflection to improve the quality of the context that it's gathering. So instead of just doing a like quick and dirty search for additional context, it'll sometimes reflect and refine the search query that it's making based on the user question. Or it could read the contents of specific files, or even run a terminal command to gather the appropriate context. And so the upshot here is that it's really kind of like an agentic way of gathering the context. And in the tests that we've been running and the early usage that we've seen both internally and with people who've gotten early access to it, we've seen that this is a substantial improvement to the quality of the context that we're able to gather with this approach.
Yeah, and sort of a quick funny thing. I was, telling someone about Deep Cody, not necessarily by mentioning the name, but the concept of it, the fact that it can reflect on itself. And this guy I was telling was like, wait, it's self-aware? That's amazing. It's getting there. It's not quite self-aware, but we're getting there. And one thing I want to mention about Deep Cody is that it is currently available for pro users, but it is designed for enterprise users in mind as well. So it will work well for enterprise scale code bases. All right, I think I'm just gonna dive into the demo. One quick thing. I'm working on a single screen environment, so if anything stops working or anything, just let me know so I can hear. All right, I'll just add this to the stage. And to set the context, I want to show a couple of improvements in a few different areas here. I hope you can see the screen. Bien.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So the improvements I'm going to show are in 3 areas: the way we handle terminal output, Deep Cody, and prompt library. And I'm going to show them all in one go in a single example here. I'm in this particular directory. I'm just going to show you what we have here. And what I want to do here is I want to say, give me a hello world Python script that uses OpenAI ChatGPT API And then I'll explain a little bit more. I'll say the keys are in .env, but the structure of those keys can be seen in .m.sample. I'm using Deep Cody here. So one quick change we made is the way we showed that little UI text, and that's in the direction of showing more of what Deep Cody is doing exactly. What search terms it's using, what files it's opening up. For example, in this particular case, this file, so that you know exactly what Deep Cody is doing. And let's click apply here to add this file here. I'm just going to make sure to save it. I'm going to execute this code. You might have seen that. It's already satisfied here, so I'm going to run it. Python hello world py, and I'm getting an error here. So the error basically says, it's using an old syntax. What I would do before we made this recent change is I would, copy and paste it manually, but I don't have to do that anymore because I can right-click, click Ask Cody to explain, and we had it before, but it would send it to a new chat, a new session of chat. Instead, now it sends it to this existing chat, so we can continue the conversation in this particular context. It looks like he was able to fix it. I'm going to click apply here again. And by the way, smart apply, great feature, and I use it all the time. And let's see if it was able to fix it. I'm going to run python hello world.py again. Now it worked. Okay, so you might have missed it, but the difference it made is this thing right here. It used to be client.chatCompletions, I think a single word, but now it's 2 words, chat.completions. So this is a new syntax that we need to use. And I could, every time I want to create a OpenAI API script, I could repeat this conversation every time, but that would be kind of annoying. So I can just go to Sourcegraph's web UI, tools, prompt library here, and then I can say click, create prompt. I'm going to call it ChatGPT 7 here. And then I can say whenever creating a script, Python script that uses OpenAI API, make sure to use this syntax. And the nice thing about prompt library is I'm able to add different contexts like current selection, current file, current repo, and so on. This is not a draft, so I don't need that. And I also have the option to force this prompt to automatically run. I don't need that, so I'm just going to click create prompt here. And then I can go back to my IDE, code editor. I'm just going to create a new chat here and delete what we have here, just to make sure we're not using anything existing here. I can select, I think it was ChatGPT 7. ChatGPT, CHAGPT 7. I'll just use that. And then I can say, oops, just to show you the whole thing, I want a hello world script that just returns, that uses this. And then I'll say the same thing, keys are in .env, but the key structure is in .env.sample. I hope this works. Live demos always kind of scary because it's not always, it's not deterministic, these AI systems. But Deep Cody decided to fetch the correct file here, .env.sample. And it looks like it created a file with the new syntax, accept. And the final thing I want to show is save it. There we go, hello world. So those are the 3 quick improvements I wanted to show, again, in the way we handle terminal output, Deep Cody, and prompt library.
Cool. That is so cool. And this is Cody, Sourcegraph getting a ton smarter. And you can imagine seeing that demo, like all kinds of ways we can take this into the future. For example, that prompt that YK wrote that says, hey, here's the right way to do it. Well, that's actually kind of what you build up in your brain as a senior engineer when you've been working on a code base for a while. But the problem is it's all stuck in your brain. And in the future, prompt library will be how you can stack these little bits of knowledge about, when you're doing this, here's what you should do, in a way that AI can use when anyone else is coding, instantly getting that instant feedback, or when anyone else uses AI to generate code. Essentially gives it a bunch of guardrails and constraints and knowledge. Yeah, it's been able to tap your code base really well, but there's a lot of stuff that's in your brain. We're getting that out into the prompt library. So there's so much more that we can do there. And we're really excited to hear all of your feedback about Deep Cody. So please keep being loud about it.
Yeah, lots of good stuff happening. Before getting into this question, I totally get the excitement around prompt library from you, Quinn, because I was at this big tech conference, and I talked to a bunch of customers, potential customers, and what some of them say is, oh, we have this AI system that we use, but it doesn't quite work because it doesn't generate code in a way that fits our code base. It doesn't follow our style guide, and I think prompt library is going to be a big part of the solution for that.
Will Deep Cody be getting additional improvement changes over time? Absolutely. I think this is just the first foray into making the context fetching more agentic. We want to give Deep Cody access to additional tools, and it's something that we'll be investing in and improving over time.
Yeah, and at this point, Deep Cody is in its self-improvement loop. So no, just kidding. Not yet. We turn it off at night. There's a related question in chat, which is, are you planning to allow including static context in custom prompts? Why not accept any @syntax? And ding, 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 yes, we absolutely want to. So, really common thing is you want to, add a new UI screen, and you want to mention some stuff that's in your Linear, your Jira, your Confluence, or something like that, or just another code file. Yeah, it's definitely a gap that we hear a lot, and we will make it so you can mention anything, including stuff from OpenCTX, which is, again, a great way for you. If you love AI, and if you look at the other 80% of devs in your company and you're like, why aren't they using it? Well, this is a great way for you to give some awesome building blocks that mean that when those other people get on and use Sourcegraph, it's just going to work so well because you've set it up for them. You want to hear one other thing we're going to add to prompt library, actually? Think of, you run a prompt. We want to have you be able to specify some kind of script or other feedback loop so that you can check the output and iterate feedback in. So, that is an example of that is, if it generates tests, then have it go and execute the test to see if they pass and get in that self-improvement loop. Possibilities are endless. Byung, you want to take these?
Yeah, what's the roadmap for implementing multimodal and image upload and agentic coding? So on the multimodal image upload stuff, that is definitely on the roadmap. It's a request that we get a lot, so I think that will be coming up soon. And for agentic coding, part of what we're doing with Deep Cody is making the coding process already a little bit more agentic. And so we're curious to hear what people are after, like what sort of use cases they're wanting to use Cody for that are more agentic. And I think the thing that we want to focus on is like, what are the specific use cases and things that you're trying to accomplish rather than the means for accomplishing that. I think there's a ton of hype around these kind of like longer chain agentic compositions, and people are building against our API, automating different sources of toil in the SDLC. But we don't just want to like ship something for the sake of calling it an agent. We want this to be actually motivated by a specific use case, and specifically something that works in the context of an existing private code base. So not just something that's building something up from scratch with no prior existing history or code, but something that actually works in the context of a large complex code base and can run with limited human supervision.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to emphasize here. I don't think we're trying to like copy our competitors necessarily. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a system that works for enterprise developers, like Quinn mentioned, and Deep Cody is definitely one of them. One thing I want to emphasize of Deep Cody is that it has the ability to run a search on your code base on its own. It is powered by Sourcegraph's code search, and that's really what makes it really powerful and differentiated from every other product out there, because it is the by far the best code search product available for any type of code base. And at this large event I just mentioned earlier, I talked to someone who used to work at Airbnb and Netflix, and he said code search itself was an essential tool for him.
Using Golang, I want to know how context for autocomplete works. Autocomplete gets wonky during long sessions or when editing. Suggestions for dealing with this. Please submit a bug report if you haven't already. We'd love to take a look. The autocomplete context in Golang should work the same as it does for VS Code and other places. So it looks at recent history, it looks at surrounding files, and in some cases it might fetch something from the broader code base to help complete it. But we want to gather as much information as possible during the report, because there's a lot of factors that can affect autocomplete quality here, including language, library, what sort of code base you're working in, and that sort of thing.
Right. So I think actually I'm curious about your thoughts, Quinn. Bian, where does autocomplete fit in? Like, is it going to be all agents? Are we going to forget about autocomplete, or are we going to keep making improvements there?
Autocomplete is getting better all the time. The models are getting better. Our context is getting better. We have the leading completion acceptance rate in the industry from what we are measuring inside of our customers. I think, though, the big opportunity is in going beyond just a change right at the cursor position. What are the other changes at other cursor positions, including other files, and including something like kind of merging inline edits and autocomplete into one thing, as we have greater and greater accuracy of the kind of inline edit size changes that we can make, knowing that if you're updating the implementation of something, go and automatically update the test. And that is something where I think you need a autocomplete like really easy way to accept or reject, but you want it to be automatic. That's something we don't do yet, but that is kind of an extension of auto edits. We are shipping auto edits very soon. So Beyond can give some more on that kind of in the nearer term. What I was talking about is longer term.
Yeah. So what are we doing in the realm of like automatic actions or next suggestions? I think we're thinking about modeling everything you do in the editor as really part of this like long unified journey. And so one of the things that we're going to release soon is something that takes in the entire history of what you've done in the editor and soon beyond the editor, and actually suggest changes, like complete changes, rather than just the next couple lines as you're typing. And so that's going to use the same underlying context engine that the chat does, that the agents that people are building against the Sourcegraph API are using. And so we think that this like concept of like this shared context engine that has knowledge of everything that you've done is powerful and can be piped to multiple interfaces, including the chat-like interface that people are familiar with, but also the kind of like automatic suggestions interface, which today is quite limited to autocomplete, but in the future we'll be suggesting more kinds of changes and next actions.
I think this is something I personally appreciate, and I think a lot of our users and audience appreciate it too. It's not just autocomplete, it's not just chat. It's autocomplete, chat, agents, all of the above, right?
Yep. Yeah, so I don't know if the person who asked this is online, but what sort of details are you looking for? Like specifically for autocomplete or for chat, or what other things?
Well, I think one thing about context retrieval is it's got to be a grab bag of techniques, and it is started out just with kind of text retrieval with embeddings. Now keyword search. Now automatically introducing more kinds of context fetching, command execution, search across other repositories. So there's a lot of different components. We have some internal docs where we've just got slide full of the like 20 kinds of context sources. Some of them are lit up and some of them aren't. But automatic context is also interesting because you gotta make manual context work really well first. That's kind of the basis. You want to make it so that if it doesn't get the automatic context correct, then you know how to go and tweak it. So there's a lot of UX here as well to get that right. I think our UX for chat is different. It is a lot more showing you what is happening. It's giving you more control. And that's a really, intentional choice, because the worst thing is a magical AI that works really great 30% of the time and doesn't the other 70%.
There's some interesting questions here in the chat. So one question is, I assume autocomplete has a strict time limit. Since it's auto by default, are you considering allowing a non-auto version with a bigger budget? We already have something like that. It's the Command K feature where you can kind of like select a piece of code or just insert code at your cursor. And that uses, the larger models, whatever model you have enabled in chat for generating the code. So try that out if you haven't already. Let's see, what else? When Deep Cody is searching the code base, does it search the index that Cody builds, or can it search irrespective Cody index in the repo? So the way to think about Deep Cody is it's essentially using the search functionality as a tool. So if that tool is available, it'll use it. But if it's not available, it has other tools that it can use to fetch and read specific files that it thinks are relevant.
Cool. Yeah, we already covered this question. All right. So, this is a good one. With, Cody, is it going to be able to better understand the package and framework and versions of the libraries that I'm using? We'll use the underlying models, and those are they're not updated like every single day. So those are going to have some outdated knowledge. And in some cases, the model just doesn't know which version you're asking about, and it can't kind of discern the differences in APIs if a library is changed in versions. So what we want to do, in line with the Deep Cody example, is give Cody more ways to figure out, do we need to present the model with the library documentation for this, for that specific version? And if so, go and do that. We have a lot of that knowledge already, but we want to bring more of it to Cody so that it can present that right context. We do have with OpenCTX the ability to @mention arbitrary documents, web pages, and dev docs. So for now, what we recommend is use OpenCTX or just the web mentions to solve that. But we definitely want to make this automatic and magical. So stay tuned there. So this is asking about wrappers, abstraction layers to build other tools on top of Cody. And this is such an exciting area. I love this because we see from so many customers that they're building things like one customer, I don't know, it took 10 or 15 hours and they built some automation to fix security vulnerabilities across their code that's saving them 1,000 hours per year. We have another big customer that has 3,000 devs using Sourcegraph and Cody, and they took this monorepo to microservices migration that was going to take like 10 years, which is a total non-starter for them. And they did it in 3 months. So we have a lot of our enterprise customers doing this. For Cody Free and Cody Pro, we do have to apply some limits. And I think you can understand if you're a single user and you're using it to go and make thousands and thousands of code changes for a big team or big code base, then we would lose a lot of money on that. So if you want to do that kind of thing, then you're probably in an enterprise. So reach out and we will give you the most ridiculously scaled up, zero rate limits, capacity to do anything. Plus, we'd love to share what we've learned from all these other companies that are building these agents on Sourcegraph, like how you're describing. And look forward to us talking a lot more about this, next week and in January. We have a lot of stuff coming here. It's so cool.
I think I have a question for you guys. So it's really cool, to see these sort of additional tools that companies and developers, enterprise developers build on top of our tool and on top of our whatever CLI, API, and so on. I'm curious, are we going to productionize some of those ideas internally, or are we going to, sort of take more of a, open source everything, all of that approach?
Yeah, ultimately we want to automate the toil in software development, and we'll have to do different things. We think in terms of get that knowledge in your brain about your code base out in a way that Sourcegraph and Cody can use it. And then we need to ripple that to everywhere. And here's a great example. Let's say, you're coding, you're having a great day, and you find a bug that someone else introduced in the code. You want to go and fix it. That's how you think about it today. You go and fix that bug, and then boom, you're done. Actually, you're not done. Your job is not done. One, you want to make sure nobody else introduces that in the future. Two, you want to go and remediate it everywhere else that it exists in the code. So how do you do that? And in reality, what you want to do is kind of specify an invariant. You want to say nothing like this bug should ever exist in my code. And it's not an exact match, but it's, something that you as a human know how to identify, but nobody actually does all that work. And as a result, it's going to, reoccur. So we want you to be able to specify invariants, kind of like YK, how you did in that OpenAI API example, where you said, whenever we're doing this, make sure we do this. And we want you to stack a bunch of those up. And then for us, that's the kind of knowledge that we want you to provide. And that might mean that you're writing code to identify those or code to fix those. That's the stuff that, you, as in our customers and users, need to write, because you know best. We don't know all those things. It's stuck in your brain right now. But what we want to productize and make really first class is integrating that so that, in your code review tool, pull requests, merge requests, it's beautifully presented, it's automatically fixed, so that in every editor, there's an amazing workflow so that it catches it as quickly as possible, so that you've got tools to go and, at large scale, fix that everywhere. And we've got batch changes and other things. So, we're pretty close to pulling all these pieces together to make that happen. But, that's the kind of difference. We want to do all the kind of boring workflow and integration stuff so that you can just say, your intent, and we will ripple that everywhere, forward and backwards in time, so that if you ever find something that pisses you off in your code, you'll be able to fix it forevermore, really fast.
That sounds like a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned, code review tool. I think we can take that sort of as an example. I think some of our customers are building a code review tool on top of Cody and Sourcegraph. Do we then take that idea, provide it to other customers, or do we provide an example code base and then say, here's an open source version of it, go ahead and customize it?
Yeah, we'll start out with some, open source batteries not included tools to let you build that, because we have a lot of customers that have done that. And it's actually two pieces of work. One, it's them saying, what should Cody look for in the diff? That's the kind of smart part that we want them to keep doing. The other part is, how do you integrate with the GitLab API and blah, 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 all that. We want to do that boring stuff. So that's kind of like open source tooling that we're going to ship. And we'll also get in our browser extension and other things like that. And I think it'll be a first-class product of Sourcegraph. So, stay tuned. And the thing that we are always committed to is we want you to keep using the tools that you love. And in some cases, the tools that you don't have a choice to use, but if your company makes you use something, we want Sourcegraph to work really well in those. So we're going to integrate with your existing tools rather than saying, hey, we've got this other great way of doing code review. Because the reality is every dev has different preferences here, and we don't want you to have to convince one of these religious, convince a bunch of devs on one of these religious debates for you to use Sourcegraph. So we'll integrate really deeply into your existing workflows.
Yeah, and going back to an earlier thing that Quinn said, if you're working on an internal tool and want help building that and using things like our context API or our inference API, reach out to us. We'd love to help you build that and also promote that if your plan is to release it publicly or to open source it. I think historically in developer tools, the bulk of the innovation has come from people working inside larger organizations that are building tools to automate challenges and problems that you see because you're working inside the context of a particular, large, messy production code base. And AI is not going to change that. So we think the vast majority of the innovation for building these bits and pieces of automation, they're going to be driven by people building internal dev tools. And if we can help you do that and also promote it publicly so that you and your organization get the credit for making DevX awesome inside your org, that's one of the things that we want to be able to do by opening up our APIs and helping people build against them.
I think one sort of side product, I'm not sure if it's a side effect, but one thing that's going to happen is, coding and software engineering are going to be a lot more fun with all of this automation. We'll be able to focus on just more valuable and fun parts.
Totally. Got it. Yeah. So will we get back code ignore for non-enterprise users? This is causing some issues. We'd love to add this back. It's kind of on our radar. We know that's been causing some pain. And yeah, the short answer is that we do want to add this feature back.
I believe Quinn needs to leave soon, so maybe we can take this question and then, have you give final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm losing my voice. I need to go rest my voice. So Byung and YK will continue after this. This is a really interesting case. Can Cody in general just learn from the kind of fixes that you make? Yes, it could. That we could have a really cool demo around that, and we want to get there. But first, we want to make it so you can specify those things explicitly, because that's going to work strictly better, and we're going to be able to ship that strictly sooner. And maybe some people are going to wait until, hey, I want this all to work automatically. I don't know. We think that people in our community, the people that are champions of Cody and Sourcegraph, you'll be the ones who inside your companies are going in the prompt library and putting in these prompts so that everyone else has a great experience with AI, so that they're not sitting around waiting maybe forever, for all this stuff to work completely automatically and magically. So the answer is yes, but it will not be automatic, and you will have more control over this, which frankly means you can tell one of your colleagues, hey, in our weird code base and this weird thing, try doing this thing that always is so annoying to do. And they're going to do it, and Cody can do something magical to fix it. And your colleague is going to be even more impressed, because they're going to be like, holy shit, like, this is the weirdest thing in our code base. How did Cody know not to do that or to do it this way? And it's because you will have done it explicitly. So I think that'll be pretty magical. We can't wait to give you that kind of wow moment for your team. All right, I'm going to, YK and Byung are going to take it from here. I'm going to go rest my voice. Thank you all so much. We love our community, and talk to you soon.
See you, Quinn. All right. What else do we have? Can autocomplete support pre-prompts for open context prompts or at references? So I think this is asking if there's the ability to customize the context and prompts that are used for autocomplete. Not at this time. I think one of the considerations for autocomplete is because it does trigger automatically, and because it uses smaller and faster, but also less general models. We want to keep a kind of like tighter control over the prompt and context used for that, to ensure that there's a quality user experience. What we've seen end up happening when we do add more customization for features like this is, someone will like customize it and then they'll forget about it, and then we get a bunch of like bug reports about, hey, the quality is degraded because, this and that. And then, several hours of trying to figure out what's going on later, we realize that there's like something in the customization or prompt that caused the model to go off the rails. And so for that reason, we do keep kind of like a tighter control, don't offer as many customization points as we do with chat. But if there's specific things that you're seeing, like specific completion examples that fall short or aren't doing as well, please submit those to us so that we can kind of record them, roll that into our eval suite, and make things better in the next iteration. This is a great question. I think for the crowd, I can go first for myself. So, what types of prompts do I keep in my library? I keep a whole bunch. I have a prompt that's dedicated to generating unit tests in a couple different languages that we use internally. So Go and TypeScript, where I list out some best practices that I like to have in the tests that I generate. I have a couple of prompts for explaining code in different ways. One for where I want a very detailed explanation, and one where I want just kind of like a short, succinct explanation. And I've written a couple prompts to do these like translations from one language to another. In some cases, if I have just written this kind of like API that I've exposed to the front end, and now I want to generate a client for that, I have like a prompt that's dedicated to doing that translation because I've done it a couple times. There's also a couple of like open source libraries that I've used in the past where there's a couple of like tips and tricks that I've learned are helpful with using those libraries, and so I've written those prompts up as well. So that next time I want to figure out how to do something in that library, I can roll in the prompt template so the model avoids making some of the common mistakes that it does, such as when YK was shown earlier, using like an outdated version of the library. With other libraries, you can sort of like adjust that in the prompt that you use. Anyone else have interesting use cases for prompt libraries or potential use cases that you're excited to try out?
I guess I can share one. So I might have mentioned it somewhere, but I like to kind of speak out loud whenever I write a design doc or blog post, stuff like that. And I have this prompt that I use. I'm not sure, I may or may not have put it in the prompt library yet, but the prompt basically says, follow my style tone. Like don't change my style tone or worse. Follow exactly what I say. Just structure it in a way that makes sense as a design doc, as a blog, as a blog post, and a prompt like that seems to work well.
Cool. There's a question in the chat. Do we have stats on autocomplete usage versus edit with Cody versus the actual chat? Chat is still a context switch for me, so it is still the exception. I don't have the precise stats off the top of my head. It's a bit apples and oranges because there are very different modalities. But what I can say is that chat usage has gone way up since the beginning of the year for us. I think, at the start of this year, it was kind of like averaging a single digit a couple times per day. And now it's up to like, dozens of chats per day. And sometimes even higher inside specific organizations. We do still see this like bi-modality between users. Some people use exclusively chat on one end of the spectrum. They say things like, autocomplete is just annoying for me. I don't like having things interrupt me when I am in the middle of coding, especially if it's wrong some percentage of the time. Whereas other people like yourself are of the opinion like I never really remember to go to chat, so I just like having it insert stuff, and that helps out a lot. If you haven't kind of tried out the chat yet, I would just recommend taking an afternoon and being very intentional about chatting. So for me personally, it was one of those things where it wasn't until I sat down for an afternoon and just like tried to write as little code manually as possible that I started to see the kind of like true potential of chat. I think once you've gotten into the mode of like, hey, I'm writing a code and I want to finish it, I think your developer's brain is like, I don't want to be interrupted by anything. Like, no one talk to me, nothing help me. I don't want a context switch. I just want to finish writing this function. And so for me, at least personally, when I go into manual mode, there's almost sort of like a psychological resistance to popping out of that and using chat. Whereas if I'm being more intentional about it, oftentimes I will very intentionally write the first draft of that function in chat and maybe refine it through a couple of like iterative prompts before I pop into manual mode to fix whatever remaining bugs or issues remain. But for me, at least, that has to be kind of like a conscious decision made at the beginning, because otherwise, once I'm in that particular mode, I just like to stay there.
Right. I think it's a huge mindset that people already had to go through, and they are still going through. I think some of them. But I like to see like a software engineer becoming a little bit like a tech lead, and tech lead becoming a little bit more like an engineer manager, where you're not so focused on writing lines of code, but more focused on like what should this function do, and what should this like block of code do.
There's another question. We need an option to autosave the file when accepting the code. So if you actually save the file now, it'll auto accept. So that's typically what I do. Instead of just like clicking the accept button, if you just save the file in question, it will accept all the kind of outstanding proposed blocks as well. When will experimental commit message leave the experimental phase? That's a good call out. Maybe we should promote that to non-experimental. It's been out for a while. We'll make a note of that. Yeah, are there any plans to include better dependency graphing? Codesers is nice, but dependency graphing would speed this up. I think specifically you're talking about like speeding up the process of fetching the appropriate context for a given query. The short answer is we do this in a limited form right now, but it's going to get a lot better in the next couple of releases. So we're incorporating more and more of Sourcegraph's code graphing abilities into Cody itself. So expect this to improve pretty soon. Is there a recommended approach to have Cody be aware of new framework versions, open source frameworks that we use but don't develop ourselves? So the lowest hanging fruit way of doing this is just by having a prompt library where you can explicitly prompt it to use a specific version of a framework. That way you kind of direct it to using a specific version of that. You can also mention the dependency files, so package.json or pom.xml. That is also useful in making the model aware of the dependency version that you're trying to use. And then if you really want to go deeper into this, you can also implement an open context provider that targets the documentation of a specific version of that library. So open context is a pretty simple protocol for incorporating new sources of context into Cody. And right now there's an existing provider for dev docs, but you can also write your own that targets a specific version of the framework that you're using fairly easily. Is there a feature to have a file in a repo root and have a prompt in that file added to chat by default when the code is open in an editor? Not right now, but that's an interesting idea. So is the idea that for a given, I guess like for a given repo, you want to customize like the system prompt or the prompt template used. So I'd imagine this is for in a particular subdirectory, you're using specific frameworks, or maybe you have specific style guidelines or something like that. That's a really good idea. We should look into that. Yeah, code style, exactly. Cool. We got any other questions?
I feel like we've covered a lot already. I'm curious, if you have any thoughts about kind of what's happening in the industry in general, like recent news and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time to be building developer tools right now, because there's so much potential for AI and LLMs to be impacting the things that we do and making it quicker, faster, easier to build software. I think a lot of where the kind of like public attention is focused on is on still kind of these like demo use cases of building simple apps from scratch, and that's cool to see. You know, there's certainly like a need for that. Like I find myself building more simple apps from scratch on the weekends, and random utilities that help my day-to-day a lot. But where our attention is focused, and where I think Sourcegraph and Cody are kind of like pretty singular right now, is on making AI effective in production, complex, messy code bases. So like one thing we like to say is that if your software has users, then almost by definition, it's messy, it's large, it's legacy, it's got multiple contributors. Because as soon as you have users and as soon as it's driving revenue, then you have feature requests and business demands and things like that pull the code in a direction that isn't just the cleanest possible source. You want to ship things quickly, you want to ship things on a deadline. There are often trade-offs there, and you acquired tech debt for a reason in order to get those things out the door sooner. And so our focus is really on making tools that are effective in those contexts. Those are the customers that we serve. When we started with code search back in the day, the sweet spot for code search was development teams. At least you need like a dozen or two contributors to that code base before code search starts to become a real pain point and a real time saver for your team. And so that's where our focus still is. And I don't really see that conversation represented in the kind of like cultural zeitgeist or dialogue right now. I think we should be doing a better job of talking about what we're doing there and engaging a lot of our users and customers that are using us in those private code bases. So if you're using us inside the context of an existing company building features for applications that have a bunch of users or that drive a lot of revenue, come reach out to us. We'd love to get in touch with you, see how you're using it, understand where the shortfalls are, and maybe feature you on a stream like this or something like that, so you can show off some of the cool stuff that you're building, and we can also highlight some of the hidden stories right now that are getting lost in the noise of professional developers actually building things for these existing applications and systems that power our quote unquote digital infrastructure.
Yeah, I think there's a huge gap between the Twitter hype world versus the real world of enterprise and professional developers doing their job. And I remember one thing one of our customers mentioned at some point is most developers spend like 90% of their time reading code, or something like a majority of the time reading code, and that's totally understandable. And whenever I'm talking to a potential customer, whenever I mention like the word legacy code, it seems to hit pretty hard for them a lot. Like that's a huge pain, and we definitely want to be able to solve for that.
Cool.
All right. Any final thoughts?
I think that's it. I just want to say thank you all for taking the time to be here with us. We really value our user community. You all have given us a ton of just invaluable feedback as we built Cody. And so keep the feedback coming. Keep sharing Cody and Sourcegraph with your friends. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Cool, perfect. And we have a couple of things that we're asking down here, in the banner below. Justin might want to come up and say it, ask you guys himself, or you could just read it.
Yeah, maybe we can address some of these in the Discord after the fact. I'd love to get to all the questions that we weren't able to get to in the live session.
Cool. All right, I'll just say thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Justin for helping us out, and Bian for being here. Quinn, although he's not here anymore, thank you so much for being here.
All right, take care. See you, everyone.
All right, bye, everyone.